Hi, friends, ecom wizards, and hopefully creative strategists. Welcome to the very first episode of the Creative Strategy Podcast of all time. This is the podcast where we will dissect the creative processes, idea generation techniques, and secret stories of the world's most talented creative strategists in the e-commerce performance marketing space. I'm your host, Brett Friedman, smiley guy who lives and breathes creativity, once called a unicorn of the industry. That's a little bit about me. Today we have on a guest who deserves the warmest welcome, a digital legend and good friend, Giann Quijano. Giann has walked an unbelievable, unconventional career path up the ranks from working Craigslist jobs, scaling to exit his own design shop, and climbing through creative roles at the very best agencies in the world, working on clients that range from startups to Fortune 500 household names. Currently, Gian consults for growing D2C brands, and he builds creative teams for agencies looking to scale their performance creative departments profitably. Important word there. Stick around to learn about the importance of communication in creative, G's predictions for the future, rare but relevant media recommendations, and add ideas off the dome for a brand we've both worked on, Cutscene Sleep. And have you heard of Mickey Mouse? This is a pre-IP release story, a really good one to close out the episode. Stay tuned. Giann Quijano. Giann, would you like to do a quick introduction?
What's up, y'all? Giann Quijano. I am a creative person. I'm a dad. I'm an investor. I an overall really good friend of Brett, and I'm super grateful that he asked me to be on for this.
Thank you. Gee. Tell us a little bit about how you became a creative strategist and how you've grown from there.
Okay, that's a huge story, and I was what I was thinking about prior to you asking. I was like, okay, how am I going to break this down? So I don't want to age myself, but I feel way older than maybe I even look, and I have no hair under here. I'm bald. So back in the day, there was this thing called like Tumblr. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tumblr. Do you know what Tumblr is, Brett?
I remember Tumblr.
Okay, Tumblr was dope back in the day, and it was like blogging. And I remember getting out of high school, and I was into the blogs and trying to like customize it with like HTML, and like I wanted to learn how to like make my even my MySpace back in the day more epic, right? And when I graduated high school, I didn't really have any direction where I wanted to go. I just knew that I wanted to get into the creative world. And literally the day after I graduated high school, I got like graduation money and things like that that I saved up for. And I went to the Apple store. It was like the very first Apple store that opened up at Cerritos Mall in Southern California. And I bought like it was like a $900 MacBook. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is like going to change my life. And YouTube learning was like not really a big thing. But
Yeah.
I literally remember there was a few videos on like how to like pirate using Pirate Bay to download Illustrator and Photoshop. And so that's what I did. That literally the next day, I remember it specifically the next day after high school graduation because I was like, I don't want to waste time. I want to go and get busy. And I went to an It's a Grind over there, a coffee shop, and I was like the first person in and then the last person to leave for like a week straight. And I would just sit there listening and learning how to use and manipulate the programs. And then after that, I learned how that basically taught me to be like a designer, like really a crash course, taught myself just to play with the programs. Then I went into, I was like, hey, I want to go work in the fashion industry and I want to make t-shirts and be really cool graphic designers. And I used those programs that I pirated and I started applying for jobs on Craigslist. I had to create like an email that I still use to this day, and it's called GQ Design Concepts at Gmail. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Who comes up with a name like that at like, 19 years old? It was so funny. Yeah, and I still use that email today, Brad. That's what you signed me up for.
That's right.
But long story short, I learned the programs. I wanted to like I had this goal of like wanting to go and do something, so I just went and did it. And I went to Craigslist, got a job, and I started as a in-house graphic designer for Fresh Jive clothing, like in 2000 and 2009, 2010. And I literally just started learning those graphics skills that I learned off of YouTube. I learned a lot about the industry and I ended up learning that like, hey, like in order to really be productive as a creative person and sell your ideas, you have to be able to showcase it like financially for it to make sense.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge learning because I was like always the Mr. Art Director, creative, like big vision. Oh, you could do this. I come up with a million ideas, a million different ways, but at the end of the day, the decision maker was the one with the bank, with the with the pocket money. And so I'm like, all right, I gotta convince this guy, and he's gonna want to know about data, and he's gonna want to know about like how's this gonna benefit my business. And so that was a really big learning lesson that I had when I was young. But luckily,
Yeah.
I learned it really young, so that's awesome.
So learning to tie like the financial aspects of and data to creative is kind of that big unlock for you when you change your career.
Yeah, and learning like because I think there's a lot of creative people, and like I love how creative our generation is. Like we love like to always rethink, and maybe some of it is because we don't like to like follow the status quo, and we want to come up with our own ideas. But it's like that's only half the battle. Brands and companies are always looking for big ideas, but it doesn't really mean anything if you can't quantify how it's going to help them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely what I love about creative strategy is just being able to put a number to a piece of art and see what it's worth
Yes,
to an audience.
dude, 100%.
Okay,
Exciting.
what we're gonna do on every podcast from now on is dive into a brand for just 5 minutes and just come up with some ad ideas. So we're gonna look through a brand called Cutscene that G and I both know and have worked on, and we're just
Yes,
gonna come up with some ad ideas for a few minutes live. So
let's
I'll share
go.
my screen. We'll go through the website a little bit. So just for some context, Cutscene is a sleep aid for gamers, as you can see. Um, it's a drinkable mix. So it looks like you scoop it, you mix into a
The
drink.
powder, right?
Yeah, it's a powder. Drink it, and then it helps you go to sleep. Gee, give me one idea. How would you sell this?
Yeah, I would be like, I would probably, I'd probably want to learn a little bit more about it. You don't let great sleep. I would definitely like, you could tell they're using like gamer lingo, like RNG or EZGG. Like, I'm not the world's biggest gamer, like straight up, but I would dive heavy into like their competitors. Like, okay, so if this product puts me to sleep, I would understand what keeps me awake. And I know there's bigger names out there that are doing that. I would definitely go look first at like you can use a magic brief or you can use something like that, but go look at their ad account and see what they're doing just to get inspiration. But then honestly, I would also like call out if I had to just if this is the only page I had to look at, I would go after those, 100% sugar free, 100% gluten free, 100% made in America as like the first like attempts. And then I would also say like I'd probably open up another tab, look for data on like how important sleeping is for your brain, and
Ooh,
then
that's good.
literally just call like the worst parts of it, saying like if you don't sleep, you're gonna die in these many days, and something dramatically crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sleep is important to a number of brain functions, including how nerve cells communicate to each other.
Wow.
I would,
Sounds important.
I yeah, and that's obviously very important. But it's like I would probably, I'm trying to be thumb stopping in what I'm thinking about. I'm trying to make their brand stand out against competition. Like I would, dependent upon if the company's risk advertising, tolerance, I would probably something along the lines is like, hey, like your nerve cells stopped working a long time ago. Take this to improve them. You
That's a
know,
brutal intro. It's a strong hook.
it is,
Hey,
but
your
it's
nerve
like, but
cells are
it's also,
fried.
oh shit,
Get better sleep.
yeah, 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 don't fry your nerve cells any longer, and then I'd have like a frying egg next to my sleep aid. Remember back in the day when they're like, this is your brain on drugs.
Yeah.
They'd be like, this is your brain without sleep.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think those are super cool. And then
Cool.
also like,
Yeah.
yeah, that one right there. Scroll down right there. See what others want to know is um right there, like what happens if you don't if you don't sleep to your brain. I don't know who wrote that sentence. That doesn't make sense.
Terrible. That's like millions of people searching this on Google. The
Yeah,
exact
that's such
same
an interesting. That's not
poor
good
grammar.
for America. Like yeah, the brain struggles to function properly, and then like I would say, okay, when my brain isn't struggling properly from a lack of sleep, what happens? And then a list would come in, and I would use those as my like hooks.
Yeah, I love it. All right, let's go. Let's go one step deeper.
Yeah,
When the brain struggles to function properly, what happens?
I'm sure you're gonna get a lot, but maybe
Oh yeah, cognitive
function
impairment,
sleep.
executive dysfunction. Yeah, I mean you're probably worse at working. I can just imagine someone passed out their desk. I feel like that was me at my first internship, just always passed out at my desk. I was not functioning
Yeah,
very well.
yeah.
That's if I got better sleep, I'd probably be a more
You're
effective
probably
intern.
taking too much cutscene, bro. You got to
Yeah,
slow it down.
that's right. That's right. It's about a perfect balance. That's a good. We flip it on its head. If you take too much cutscene, here's what happens, just to show how effective it is.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think it's also like, we're pointing out the negatives, right, that it's solving, but then we'll come back and make another like campaign or idea for the positives. But then
Yeah,
also
some of the
like the
benefits
fact
in
that
there.
they're like using gaming language because this was probably built by actual gamers themselves.
Yeah,
And so I would really like encourage, whether it's like the founder or people on their team to just have like UGC content of them using it. and talking about their experience for sure.
Yeah.
Because
Cool.
you can't go wrong, and gamers can smell through bullshit the same way advertisers can too.
It's
So it's
true.
like, not gonna get
Yeah.
like some paid for UGC person to be like, oh my god, I sleep better with this scoop. Like nobody's gonna buy that. That's a waste of your time. But
It's
if
gotta
you
be
can get
real.
actual like, hey, like my I leveled up because I slept a little bit better. Try this out. Like it's speaking to your audience.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, you absolutely smashed that. Thank you, G. Tell me more about your idea generation process. So, how do you usually come up with ideas?
So I probably am, and it's not a good thing at all, but I probably spend way too much time online. I love the internet. Let's just say that. The internet is dope because you can get unbiased opinions and you can really see what people like actually feel. And you can do that a lot of times for a product or a brand. You can see it in their comments, right? Like
Hmm.
you can read the reviews, and there's definitely a bunch of review farm apps now, but there are some really cool brands that have some really good reviews by honest people that they've really tapped into an audience with. And so like that's always going to be your best bet, is to read the reviews, book time with somebody who's bought your product,
Yeah.
ask them about it and why they bought it and what they think it is. And sometimes like you'll find that what they think it actually is like not even what you anticipated it to be. But okay, like I didn't know that you felt this strongly about this product, but that's cool. Like that's a very like a unique approach to it, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's always important to like, yeah, just get actual user feedback than just assuming what people are thinking because it's your product or your brand or the brand, it's your client, right?
Yeah.
It's like for net new ideas, you got to like look at net new like approaches and net new opinions. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're like not good, sometimes they're good, but then you can kind of like craft something together. And then I'm a huge believer in like there's nothing new under the sun. Like you'll get creatives, people that are like maybe younger in the creative strategist role, and they're like, I'm gonna come up with like this epic. It's gonna take me 45 hours to make this one by one ad. And you're like, dude, like we can pump out so many more angles and get data on so many more like options from that one idea. And you're like, oh, but it's gonna be a banger. And it's like you can have one banger or you can have multiple bangers. And it's like you're gonna want you're like, I always think of it this way, right? Like creative strategist role is to equip a buyer who's behind the bow and arrow with my job is to give you as many arrows as possible. And like you have to shoot it. Like, and if you're only shooting one, I put all my energy into one arrow, like we're really not setting them up for success. But if I give you four different arrows that go four different ways, you're gonna hit something. And then once it hits something, then we can come back in and then we can get more solidified on that angle. But our job at high level, especially if you're going like evergreen, is like you got to come in so many different ways to see what works. And even if you feel like you're the best at this industry, it's like, dude, this is why it's so exciting. It's like a game. You got to go try it. It makes it fun.
Yeah. I love that. So, okay, you are equipping a bunch of arrows to the media buyer. Tell me about the next step. So you come up with all these ideas, you have all these arrows, you're giving them to the
Yeah.
media buyer shoots them, and then yeah, talk to me about
Okay.
yeah,
So
what happens
media
there.
buyer shoots the arrows. He hits, 1 out of 4, let's say. If he's a good media buyer, hopefully 2 out of 4. That'd be awesome, right? But let's say, okay, out of those 4 arrows, you hit this one. Now I'm going to see it, right? Because I'm going to be actively looking at the data daily. I'm not going to wait, 2 weeks or a month to look back. It's like I want to be able to kind of see it pick up when it gets going. And so I'm in the ad accounts daily. As it hits and I see one start to go, I'm going to look at what makes that one different, right? And it'll all be dependent on their buying strategy and how they did it, and how they have it broken down, right, and broken apart. But let's say that they have this one. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to see what the messaging is, what makes it different than the others. I'm going to say, okay, now instead of looking at the world as an option, I'm going to look at this as an option. Like, how do I make this again, or how do I tweak it or adjust it or make iterations to this existing piece of creative that's winning? And then I'll take that one and make 4 or 8 different versions of it. And then after that, it's like, okay, hey, media buyer, it's been 2 weeks, performance is going down. Here's 8 new opportunities for you that has this winning ad in mind.
Yeah.
And now they're gonna be, oh, thank you so much, and they get something new, right? The other way I like to think of it, and I just had a call with a really big client this last week, and I did an analogy for creative strategy, and I said, hey, okay, like working with an agency, right? You usually have different roles that you engage with as a brand. First one is usually like a media strategist or a growth strategist, and they are hitting your targets, right? That's great. Then the second one is you have a media buyer or paid social expert right on your account, and their job is to shoot those arrows or to drive this vehicle. Let's imagine the brand is the car, and the growth strategist is mapping where your destination is on your road trip. The social buyer is the one behind the wheel, driving daily, making adjustments and turns along the way. But the creative strategy and performance creative is the gas that keeps that car going. And that is the right way to think about it, because you can't have one of those without the other. And you cannot be an amazing driver if you got no gas to get you there. And you can't be an amazing media strategist if you don't have the roadmap, just by having the roadmap without actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. And then the creative strategist, you can have all these ideas, but it doesn't mean shit if it's not performing and getting you to your goals destination.
Right.
And so
Low
it's like
quality gas.
that three-step analogy is like always the best, because you're going to fill up when you go on a road trip, you're going to go step by step along the way.
Gee, I know that you have diesel in all of your vehicles. You're pumping, or maybe they're even electric, like you have the highest quality gas possible. Tell me like about a major problem that you've had, and how you've overcome it. Like if you're with a client, crazy client stories, something really hard that's happened.
Sure.
Like, yeah, how do you approach something that's really challenging?
Yeah. Okay. So creative strategy is, left brain and right brain, right? Like that's unique, right? And not everybody's wired that way. It's very unique to certain people that want to go and learn it, and it's definitely possible to learn. But another big part of that is like people skills and relationship skills. Like, look at you. You're one of the nicest people I've ever met. You know what I mean? And it's like you're super smart. You know how to create ideas and come up with swings and things like that. But it's like 80% of coming up with an awesome idea is the way that you sell it. And if you don't know how to communicate, like that's something that I would totally like, that's a red flag that I would totally want you to work on, especially before you bring it to new clients. Because new clients, we're in an agency world, at least I am, and it's a service-based business. We got to make sure the client's happy. And the only way the client is happy is if you're communicating well, often, and actually bringing value. They're spending, hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, 50s of thousands of dollars, right? Every month. You for damn sure better believe that they're going to want a white glove service. And so that requires you to communicate well, to be a personable person, and to understand their vision, and communicate that you not only understand it, but you're part of it and you're here to enhance it. And so I've been on calls where you could have the world's smartest strategist, like they know data left and right, or the world's most creative person, but they don't know how to talk. That's a big learning curve for some people, especially if they come just creative backgrounds, because they want to be like hermits, right? They just want to be like left alone with their headphones and just like make it look pretty, or they just want to be in spreadsheets all day, right? And you're like, okay, well, that's awesome. Now you have to become this creative strategist person that does both, but then you also have to be able to communicate it to people. And I think that's a big factor. And sometimes I've seen people hop into these meetings and it does not go well because they don't know how to communicate it well. And so that's a big, like, if you had an opportunity, like I would just like practice with your friends back and forth. Like I do it with you all the time, or I'll do it with other friends too, where I like, hey, like I have this idea, that's what I'm thinking. And can I clearly articulate it and explain what it's going to actually solve? I think that's a really big factor in it.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have other like tactics and strategies when communicating with clients that help you work through it, or like other questions that you ask yourself when you're prepping for a call, for example?
100%. So I might not be like every creative, because I'm a huge believer in like not procrastinating and not being late. Like I'm definitely not that person who's like, you have a presentation tomorrow at 11, and at 10:30 I'm inside the slides deck. Like I'm for sure like trying to get it done the day before at minimum, if not a few days before, and just maybe copy and paste fresh data, but that's basically it. So like being proactive is way more important, because it sets you up for success, and then you can go into a call confidently knowing that you know your shit. And then I also too will always say, like, if I'm coming in from a client's perspective, why is this of value to me? And then I always remind myself how much their retainer is with our business, because that's level setting. If I'm on their side and I'm spending 40 grand a month for some ad creative, like what is my expectation? I'm going to have high expectations, and you should have high expectations of yourself and to serve that client well too. And so like I always look at it from the perspective of being from the other side, and then always showing up early and being overly like prepared.
Yeah. Wow. That's
really smart. Yeah. I
Like for
think,
bigger clients, the expectation is a lot higher than like a small like startup who's like, oh, any idea you pitch them is cool. You know?
yeah. Yeah, I guess it's also true because they've gone through so many concepts already. I mean, how do you like if
Mhm.
you've delivered, hundreds and hundreds of concepts to a client, like how do you keep getting fresh stuff? I know you mentioned earlier when you do idea generations, like getting new content. Is there anything you have to like make sure the client feels like everything is fresh that's coming through the door, even if the value props haven't
Yeah,
changed?
dude, 100%. So it all depends on the goal that you're trying to the strategy you're using to acquire new clients, dependent like upon the channel for sure. Because
Yeah.
you have to make specific creative for specific channels. Like not everybody wants to hear that because it's a lot more work, but it's true. Like you cannot just do one and expect it to work everywhere. And so with that being said, like you're talking about coming up with hundreds of ideas. It's like you got to times that by four if they're on four different channels. Like it's so much. But the best way of doing that is to understand, again, nothing is new under the sun. I'm going to go do my research and I'm going to go spend like I spend a minimum of like maybe like 45 minutes to an hour a day looking at ad accounts and looking at what's trending, what's happening. I'm looking at all the platforms. I'm looking at like what's cool. Hey, that's a good idea. I never thought of doing it this way. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna save it in my ad bank, and I just kind of have like a bunch of ads saved,
Yeah.
and then I will actually tier out those. I actually use. Have you used the tool Magic Brief? Have you ever used that?
Yeah, I've seen Magic Brief. You can save, it's like foreplay, right? Similar. You save
Yeah, it's
assets
exactly
to it.
like foreplay. It's
Yeah.
free, and this is not a shout out, but if they wanted to give it to me for free, I'll take it. But basically, the best part of that is that while I'm sourcing ideas, I can actually source them into unique individual client folders. So then that way, when I talk to my client every week, I don't have something to present to them this week, but I can show them, hey, I actually went and pulled 8 new ideas for your brand. And every week they're seeing net new creative being piled up. And so now they're thinking like, okay, Giann is like thinking about my brand at all times. And even though it's like, oh no, like I'd spend a few hours, just like sourcing ideas for your business. And out of these ideas, this little ad library bank that I'm making for you, we have limitless ideas. I like if they said, hey, I need something by end of week and it's Tuesday night, I'm like, cool. Like it doesn't scare me because I literally have so many ideas stored for them already.
Yeah.
And
So
now,
smart.
yeah, not a problem. Let's do it. It's like, all right, yeah, let me just brief it out to the designer really fast. Like, here's 4 options. And now they're like, oh my gosh, like you're able to do it that fast. It's like, it's not because I'm like Mr. Amazing. It's because I'm proactive already. I already have a bunch of stuff ready for you.
Gee, you are Mr. Amazing. Don't fool yourself. Don't let
Oh no, no. You're wearing the pink sweater, my man. I don't know. That's it.
You mentioned like yeah, you have to make unique creative for every channel as a huge hassle. Talk to me a little bit about the channels you're on. Obviously, Facebook, maybe TikTok is big. Are there any like
Mhm.
lesser known channels that you've seen work really well with good enough creative?
Yeah, like there was a big client we had and a unique unlock was like Snapchat, and like a lot of people aren't using that as much anymore. But like
Yeah.
CPM prices are great, depending on what you're selling. But then also like there is a lot of younger people on Snapchat still that are like leveraging it for whatever God knows for what reason. But because a lot of people are using it still, like there's eyeballs there, and we want to take advantage of it, right, on the cheap costs.
Yeah.
So like understanding the media mix is super important. And sometimes like you're either your growth strategist or your media strategist, right? Whatever they want to call them at that agency, like they have a plan in place. And sometimes you just got to make sure you're like in lockstep with that person to understand like, oh, okay, so you're like you're using Meta to get in front of them. You're using Google to pick up all the search ads. Like you want to be able to understand like what the strategy is so that way you can support it creatively. Sometimes it's like they don't talk to each other and then you just end up becoming the person just making ideas. And it's like, oh, well, like how is that supporting the overall thing that we sold to this client? We have to really make sure that it's again, that guy's the one with the plan, the media buyer is driving, but you're the one who's putting the gas. You got to know what kind of gas to put in at what time, at what part of the road trip, right?
Yeah. That's a good point. You can't put electricity into a diesel truck.
You might be able to. I don't know if it's going to be good for it though.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, Snapchat, really interesting. CPMs are low. That makes sense. Not too many people on there. When you're making creative, you have someone making creative for different channels, how do you change the creative? Like, I mean, yeah, normally probably most clients are making Facebook ads or Meta ads now. If you want to go to Snapchat, do you use the same concept but you cut it a different way? Are you completely changing everything about it?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So a lot of it is dependent upon like the product and the audience and the problem that it actually solves, right? Because if let's say you're selling, I don't know, throw me a product, right? Let's say you're selling
Water
a
bottles, Stanley iced water bottles.
Stanley iced water bottles. Okay, great. Okay, if I'm selling it on Facebook, knowing it's an older crowd, I'm going to talk about how it helps their life and how it's healthier than using plastic. I'm going to talk about how it's on sale to a degree. I'm going to talk about how you buy once so you don't have to ever buy it again. Like I'm going to talk about those benefits into it. But if on Snapchat, I'm going to talk about how it's young, it's hip, and a lot of people are interested in it, and like show people that they want to aspire to be like to use it because that's a younger demo. And so it's like the way that I sell you a product and the way I sell my mom a product is completely different because there are different seasons, and some of them might have different income levels, and some of them might have different needs and desires. And so understanding what that looks like on those channels is super important. And that's part of like what your role as a creative strategist should be thinking about too. Is like, when I'm making this ad for this specific audience person, like, is this actually like realistic? Like, I can't just spray and pray approach. I have to tailor the message, even if it's like a minor tweak in the messaging, like if I'm selling the Stanley water cup, it's like, I would say never go thirsty again, right, on Facebook. But then on Snapchat, I would say, the thirst is real. And it's like, those are the same thing, right? Selling the same water bottle cup, but it's like, it's just the messaging for the younger versus the older, and vice versa. And then especially if you go on the Pinterest route, right? It's like, oh man, like I need the Stanley water cup because it's aesthetically pleasing for my whole room. Like I'm not doing it without the right Stanley cup in mind, and it's like, okay, like those are different audiences.
Yeah, wow. You would be an amazing Stanley salesperson and marketer.
Dude, 100%. Come on, dude. Let's quench your thirst with Stanley. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah. So how do you have any strategies for getting in the mind of the target audience? I mean, you did that really, really quickly. Like, how do you think, obviously you're not, most likely not the main target audience for someone on Pinterest or Snapchat. How do you get into those like mindsets so quickly? Do you have any strategies for that?
Like honestly, a lot of it is I am online a lot for sure. Like I think that's something to do with it. I genuinely like love people and like connecting with people, and I can just, I don't know, maybe it is a gifting and it's something that I totally like am blessed for, because like I have very good like situational awareness, like skills. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad, but growing up, like I was very easy for me to tell like, okay, like this is what this person is thinking or feeling, or like even if I'm around them, if I share the room with them, right? It's like, hey, like yeah, it's a good vibe or not, but like that has a really like big impact on like how you communicate. If I walk into a room and this person's negative and upset, the way that I have to approach them is way different than somebody who's like you, who's super happy and go lucky and excited, like, but at the end of the day, you still have to talk and communicate to them. And so it's like, it always makes it more challenging. So I always think about that. And again, if I'm paying, upwards of $40,000 a month as a brand, I expect you to be doing this due diligence and thought work behind this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
That's a great point. Yeah, you mentioned like loving all people, which I think is totally true, knowing you, and I think it's also a strong value that I have. Who are some people that you absolutely love the most? Whether it's someone that you follow, someone that you just know
Mhm.
personally, like are there people in your life that you
Yeah,
get the most love for?
definitely. I have to say it because she's in the room, my wife and kids, for sure.
Cop out answer, but
100%.
totally, of course.
Hello. Thanks, Brett, for teeing me up for that one.
Yeah, I
No,
got you.
but I think like I look up to a lot of different people. I'll like short list. I already have it. I look up to like Taylor Holiday for sure. Like I love my experience at CTC, and it taught me so much and really set me up for success. So like I value his friendship, but also like his insight and the way that his brain works. I think that's awesome. Another friend that I really value and got the ability to work with back in the day, his name was Ryan Carson, and he opened me up to more so like the like esoteric and like visual side of like what it is that you're doing and making sure that you're passionate about it. And Ryan Carson, he was the founder of Team Treehouse, which is like a coding and boot camp school.
Yeah.
And I did some work with him like years ago. It was so cool to see like how passionate he was about what he was doing, and it really inspired me to like, I got to make sure the career that I chase is something that I actually care about. So that was awesome. And then I would say like thirdly is Yeah, I get really inspired by my kids. Like my kids are like super creative, like ultra creative. Like leave them alone in a room for a few hours, you'll come back to a fort being built like 5 different ways. It's like with like a hole in the wall. You're like, instead of being mad, it's just like, okay, guys, like, is that really necessary? But okay, I see what you were trying to do, like, and accomplish. Like they're having fun. Like they're. It always reminds you to be like childlike for sure.
So beautiful.
Thanks,
Kicking
dude. Yeah,
ass right now.
and it's like I'm literally looking at you, and literally outside, my kids are like playing in their treehouse right now. Like it's like dope. Like it's something that I like aspire to be like always for sure.
Yeah, that's idyllic. Okay, I asked you about love. Tell me about what things frustrate you, like as a creative strategist, as I mean now as a manager of people. Like, what are the things that make you very angry, or even just with a client, like anything work related?
Yeah. Okay. So frustrations, I think, come with a lack of speed. Because I do think that part of like as a creative strategist, like the ideas you have are like now, right? Like they're now. You should also be planning, right? And thinking about the future for sure.
Yeah,
But like the moment you make something, you want to test it and you want the answers right away. So but you kind of have to sit and wait. And so it requires you to have patience. And I am definitely not the world's most patient person, something that I'm totally working towards. But yeah, I think like you almost feel like in a creative strategist role, you're like in a hurry up, sprint, 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 and then now you sit there and pause and you wait. And then you like sprint, 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 pause. But the real hack would be for you to sprint, 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 pause, and then while you're pausing, you're thinking about the future and what's coming next.
yeah,
And that's the proper way of thinking, I think, as a creative strategist.
yeah. I love that. Oh, it's infinite. Yeah, you can always, you always can have
You can
more
always
ads in
think
the
of
ad
new ideas.
account. Yeah, always have
Yeah, you
another
can
client.
always always add more.
You mentioned that you're not the most patient. What traits do you think make you a good creative strategist?
Oh, it's a good question. I think like I am extremely curious. I am Some of the best creative strategists I worked with are entrepreneurial themselves.
Yeah,
Like because they put themselves in the position of the brand or the business owner. And I think that's super important, right? Like a business owner is not going to want to be pitched the same idea over and over and over again. Going in there and just changing the copy is no longer enough, right? You
yeah,
have to come with like higher net new generative concepts, and that really requires um like a passion for it. But like that's where the actual grit comes in. Like, okay, well, what do I do now? How do I sell the Stanley Cup now? Like I've done it 10,000 ways. It's like there's another 10,000 if you really try hard enough,
yeah,
And so it's like you got to keep pushing. And so as a creative strategist, like for sure you have to be able to have this like entrepreneurial or like maybe it is called grit, right? Like, oh, I hit a wall, and instead of just like saying, oh, I hit this wall and I'm upset or I'm sad about it, it's like, how do I get over this wall or break through this wall, or how do I like bring another person to help me think about how to go around this wall? Like you have to be a problem solver,
yeah,
and I think that's the big.
yeah. If you were like when you're hiring a creative strategist, what are some of the things that you think about or you ask or you look for in a person?
Yeah, dude, 100%. We hire a lot of them. I honestly, the biggest thing is I'll always do a test project. I'll never just hire someone just for the sake of hiring them. Um, Test projects will like really tell you like one, the effort they put into it, and two, like how their brain works. And sometimes it's like really exciting. But I always use like one or two of the same style briefs to test the same things just to see like how they would think about it. So definitely a trial project. Like I would actually do the trial project before we even hop on the call because
Yeah,
it's like you'll show me that you're really interested in it if you do it. If not, like that's cool. Like it's just oh,
it's,
it wasn't worth your time. It's cool. Like, we'll find somebody else. It's okay.
yeah,
And I think like also understanding their background of like, are you coming from like the creative side or are you coming from the data side? And what I've found, it's easier to train creatives to be data driven than it is to be data driven to being creative.
yeah,
And that is like a huge unlock. So when we hire, we're never going to say no to somebody who's interested. Like we'll totally hear it out. But again, we'll do the test project first to see if it makes sense. But if you come in and you have a creative background, you're going to come in with crazy thoughts and ideas, and that's exciting, right? But if you come in on the data side, you're like, hey, like these are the 4 ads that are working, so I only did these 3. It's like, oh man, like who would you want to hire? You want the person who's like thinking out of the box, going to improve the client relationship, impress the client, who's going to be fun to work with. And like so you got to identify it. But that's why I've hired both sides, and there's benefits to both for sure, but it's just a matter of like the like longevity of the relationship, and if even if they're happy in the role, right? Like sometimes you'll hire an ultra creative person and then you put them in front of data, they're like completely freeze.
Yeah.
Or you're a data driven person, you put them in a room full of creatives and they won't say a word because they're intimidated. It's like, oh man, like you got to be able to find those like very rare breeds that are like kind of a mix of both, or even if they're not, but they're willing to go into the other side for sure.
Yeah. Do you see any patterns across creative strategists, or have you had any insights just about the way, like you've seen lots of really high level people, lots of people that have struggled in the roles. Like, are there any
Yeah.
big patterns that you've noticed?
Yeah, the best ones that I've noticed so far, the best habits and patterns that I've seen, honestly, is like people that are curious, like and they're constantly learning. Like you have to be an avid learner, I think, specifically as a creative strategist. Obviously, to be in marketing in 2023, you better be like a lifelong learner. But particularly on the creative front, like you have to really, really want it and really like make yourself uncomfortable and learn new tools, learn new things, learn new platforms, try new products, completely like let the ego die on the design and on the creative front, and like be open to hearing new ideas and approaches and try to do them yourself. And like, even if you fail, at least you're trying. Like that's the part where like makes the most sense to be, okay, like, yeah, this is a really good habit of a successful strategist is like, they don't mind falling on their face, but then they get right back up and do it again, you know? And it's like, cool. Like we can support that. We can help guide you for sure on that, you know, versus somebody who's like, I don't like it or it makes me uncomfortable. I don't have the bandwidth to do that. And it's like, oh, like I'm trying to understand why you would say no to this. Like we want you to try something different.
So you're someone that has always been super on top of tech and tools. And I think you're right. Creative strategy, a big part of it is staying live, staying on top of everything that's going on. Talk to me a
Yeah.
little bit about how you do that, how you stay on top of everything that's going on, and then two, if there's any tools or tricks of the trade that you have that you want to share. Because for those of you who don't know, Gian
Totally.
knows every piece of technology in the creative world that has launched in the past decade.
Right.
So yeah, talk to me a little bit about
I
that.
think like my favorites, let's see, like tricks of the trade is like have a Rolodex of ad creative that you have in your back pocket yourself. You know, like I think that's one. So like a last minute sale or a last minute approach, or the client makes this last minute drop, or they want to call a meeting because they're so upset that they don't have net new ideas. Like you want to be able to have stuff in your back pocket. So don't play your cards right and don't show everything that you have all at once. Save some as like again like a Rolodex for you to have, so that we can always surprise and delight your client as opposed to being reactive and trying to pull something from thin air. You know, so I think that's a like, so being proactive is like a number one. Number two is like actually quantify your work. Like, you know, like if they were only making X amount before I joined, and then when I joined, we were able to increase that amount. I want like take credit for that, like, and remind the client that you've done that.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of that's very easy. It's just how you frame the conversation, right? It's like, client, before we came in, we were doing this. Once we joined, we're now doing this. Do you see the marginal difference right here? That's how much you should be paying me. No, I'm just kidding. But like that is what we're doing for you. And that's what creative testing and bringing new ideas constantly to your ad account. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And so I always will like, the best people can quantify their work, where I can say, hey Brett, like how much money have you brought to this to Stanley since you joined?
Billions.
You know, and it's like, oh shoot, like, because then it puts the accountability on you, right? And some creative strategists don't like, maybe they won't like that, but the best people really do, because they're accountable to the work that they're actually doing.
Yeah. And what kind of like technology do you use to like track those things, or anything that's helpful?
Yeah. Okay, so pen and paper. No, I'm just kidding. I totally am like into like I love AI's tools, particularly like I am a huge Magic Brief fan, and again, they're not paying me to say that, but like when it first came out, I like was like definitely one of the first few to play with it, and it was like, oh man, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And we've been at agencies where like we made it like a mandatory tool, because it actually helps you fully understand and save things offline, and then just the user interface that I can share with the client too. Now the client feels like so grateful, because again, agency is a service-based industry. So it all comes down to how you service your client. And the more ideas and the more you can feel like a white glove approach to the client, the more grateful they're going to be. And so Magic Brief is definitely something. Obviously, like the Chat GPTs, the Zapieres, Asana, like that's just like the project management and like the like guiding the projects along, which is great. I call him a believer, but it's like a Pinterest believer. I still like am heavy into Pinterest, you know.
So you are the
I
target audience. I love that.
yeah. I'm definitely buying Stanley, bro. No, I'm just kidding. But I genuinely love, like ideating on Pinterest, seeing how people's brains are working, because a lot of times they'll throw things out there, and I'm definitely on social media. I also like, there's this thing called Creative Mornings back in the day, where like you can go and meet local people, and you just pick your brains, and like getting a coffee with a creative person is like one of like the best things that I do every month, and I always try to do it with a new person. Just to get like, I'll meet you at a Starbucks. Let me buy you a $4 coffee, and let's talk about like ideas and what you're learning. And
So
they'll
cool.
always bring up new concepts or new softwares and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Who's the coolest person you ever met in one of these creative mornings?
Outside of you, I
Oh,
don't know. That's a good one, dude. Coolest person I ever met, probably. Let's see. Mark Ruffalo,
Mark
super cool
Ruffalo.
guy. Yeah. Don't
Is
ask
there?
me how a family
Yeah.
member
No story. You won't give us the rest of the story.
party.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah, super cool guy and like super down to earth. And I was like,
Yeah.
dang, like you're the Hulk. Like, you can be whoever you freaking want to be, but you're like so nice. Like that was awesome. Yeah, he was like driving like the 1960s like Volkswagen bus, like super chill guy.
Wow. Did you ask him creative
But, like
questions? Did you find out his secrets?
yeah, I was just like, how did you do it? No. But really, like, it just reminded me that, like, dude, you better love what you do because life is short. And so, like, it was always super cool to see. Like, obviously, he's an actor and does all of his things, but like,
Yeah.
off camera, is like totally a normal person. Like, he's not trying to be something he's not.
Back to creative strategy. What do you see
Yes.
is the future? What do you see as like the future of creative strategy? Is there anything? Do you have any predictions for the next,
Yeah.
1, 2,
Okay, so
3,
I think
5
like
years?
let's talk about the future for sure. But before we do that, like talk about the past. Really, like 5 years ago, like this role was not like a thing really. Like there was creative directors and there was like, definitely like analysts and there's like media buyers, but like there wasn't like a person who did kind of a little bit of both or all three. And that's super important to remember. Like this is still pretty young,
Yeah.
but as ad accounts change, as strategies change, as platforms change, you're gonna need an in-house creative person that understands it holistically, and because that saves you time, money, and like essentially you can buy two positions for one, right? So that's why like it's great for a creative strategist because you can kind of name your price on that, right?
Right.
But you have to be equally as dangerous in all those different roles too. And so I think as time is like progressing, creative strategy is a very important part, right? It's the gas to that vehicle, that analogy. But I do envision in the next maybe 2 to 5 years that creative is going to become like it's already commoditized like overseas, but really like is going to be using whether it's AI. Hopefully, it will be advancements by then. And it's like that's nothing to be afraid of. And anything that should be really exciting for a creative strategist because now you can do a lot more output without having to wait for a human person to actually create it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's gonna be like the expectation will be a lot faster. And I do think that, and personally for me, I try to envision myself now as like a holistic marketer. So I actually don't say, oh, I'm a creative strategist because people are like, what the fuck is that? And then you have to explain it, right? So I just say, oh, we do marketing and then we make, but I specialize in the creative side of it, right? Like that's how you kind of explain the role to people. But I genuinely think that in the future, that there will be a more of a bleed over between the media strategist and the creative strategist, like or like a growth strategist and a creative strategist, like because at a certain point, like if I'm the agency owner, I'm like, why am I paying two high salaries for one account when the creative person can actually do what the media person is doing too?
Yeah.
Because it's easier for the creative to understand media and data than it is for the data analytical person to understand creative.
Yeah. So
And
you're
so
seeing
I
a
think,
convergence of those roles into one
yeah,
greater, some super creative strategist.
the god of the account, the super creator.
Yeah, the super
Okay.
the account
Super
owner.
creative.
I love it. Yeah, you mentioned AI. Talk to me about how you see AI integrating with the process. How do you currently use it? Are you using ChatGPT,
Yeah.
Claude, any of those? tools?
Yeah, we use all of them, to be honest. I'm very much so always playing with it. I love like even like Midjourney and all of it. Like we're always playing with it, right? Like we're heavily involved in the AI scene right now, and it's great. Like it's exciting. It's obviously a buzzword. Is it actually solving all of the problems that we needed to? Absolutely not. But we are using it like partially, and it's that partial lift that it's helping with is actually saving us a lot of time. And so I will say that it is enhancing our workflows. It's not to the point where it's taking over workflows yet, but like we're for sure ready for it too. Like the moment that it becomes to the point where I can just write a brief and it creates it and I don't have to like make 500 edits to it, that would be awesome. But right now it's kind of like cool. Like we might use it just for backgrounds, or we might just use it for like cutting out images, or we might use it for, inspiration on hooks. We might use it for like ideas, but it's not to the point where it's making them yet. But I do think that it will get there 100%.
Yeah. So you think there's a future in which there are parts of the process that the AI can fully do, like humans no longer need, and that the things that you just mentioned, like coming up with hooks, coming up with ad ideas, do you think those things will eventually be better made by the AI, or do you think humans will still play a role in it?
No, I just think that humans will do, I think AI will do 85% of the work. And then the humans 15% that the human will actually do is going to be the 50% that actually like gets the results.
Yeah.
I think AI is going to be more so just for the production side of things.
Interesting.
And like at least within the next 5 years. And I would be super impressed and I would be down if it was going to do 100% of it. But I think that it's going to do a lot of it. But then that 15% that I said, like that's the creative strategy, like that's your wheelhouse. Like how do you adjust it? Like where's the value you're thinking as a human being to get other human beings to buy things?
Yeah. Do you think that we're going to ever reach a singularity?
Say with AI?
Yeah, or achieve some kind of functional immortality, or have, you know, bionic
God,
human.
I love this stuff. In my opinion, I think so. Maybe like thousands of years, maybe. I mean, again, shit, I won't be around for it, but I'd be super stoked to watch.
Yeah,
Like I think like a lot of people are afraid of stuff like that, but it's also like it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. What can we do, really? Like honestly, you should enjoy it. Just like roll with it and see what happens.
yeah, cool. I got a couple more questions.
Yeah,
So
fire
yeah,
away.
super rapid fire. One, what do you do that speeds up your learning curve the most?
I legit take a minimum of an hour a day to learn something. Like I'm like I love YouTube, dude. I pay like the premium subscription. Like I'm constantly taking courses. Like I love it.
Yeah, awesome. What
But I remember
changed?
I
Oh, sorry.
told this like my very first when we first started this podcast, my first story is like I've always been that person to go learn it though. Like if I don't know it, I'm gonna go try and like figure it out. And so learning off YouTube is like definitely like my college crash course for sure.
Yeah, YouTube's incredible.
Yeah.
What change in any ad account that you've worked on, or any strategy that you made the biggest impact this year? So any like big change
Yeah,
you've made
honestly,
that?
it was like diversifying channels and like making massive amounts of creative. Like again, not everybody likes to hear that, but like I'm talking like a lot, like hundreds of ads
Yeah.
a month.
Wow.
And it was people are like that's not necessary. It's not, but if you're spending 10 million to 12 million dollars a month, it is necessary. And so like that's what we were doing, and that's where the results came in.
Yeah. Cool. What are the most impactful or most recommended books that you give to people?
Oh my gosh, dude, I love to read too. That's awesome. Okay. I huge, obviously like a Rich Dad Poor Dad. I love The Millionaire Next Door. I'm super into finances if you haven't noticed. But I love on the creative front, there's a like Basquiat book that talks about each of his paintings, which is really cool. And then the other one, there's a guy named Storm Thorgensen, and he is the designer behind all like the Led Zeppelin creative. And I have his like biography, and it's super good. So totally check that out.
Yeah. Wow. Great, Rex. Cool. What question would you add to this podcast? Like, what do you want to know from other creative strategists or creatives?
Yeah, I think you should talk about money. Like a lot of people, like it's super stigmatized. Nobody talks about how much money they're making and what the pay range for a strategist should really be.
Yeah.
And like how much you can expect to like be capped at versus like what a starting role should be at. Because Everybody's on a different journey. At the end of the day, like, as creative strategists and as creatives in general, like we should be able to like ask for top tier if you're producing top tier.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't like to talk about, like, no one's going to ask you what your salary range is, like, and I understand that, but also like, it's never going to change unless you start doing it.
I love
And
that.
I think you should talk about money. You should talk about bonus incentives. You should talk about like, hey, like, if you're making 100 and say you're making $130,000 or 120,000 or 89 or 100, whatever that is, right? Like that's kind of usually the range where creative strategist is at. And it's like, you could like, how many accounts are you expected to hold at those ranges? Because that helps the strategist to have a goal to get to, and then it also helps the agency owner and the business owner understand, like, okay, like, man, maybe I should offer a little bit more than what I'm offering, right? Because this is what's expected. And so talking about numbers, I think, is super important, and it really it'll just like destigmatize the industry.
Love that. Adding that to the list. Okay, this is
Yeah.
not really a question, but can you tell the Mickey Mouse story, or is that totally illegal?
The Mickey Mouse story, let's freaking do it, dude.
Yes.
YOLO. Oh, okay. So at that same time, when I was 18, like I said in my story, this was back in the day when streetwear was super big. People were spending $85, $120 for a t-shirt. And I was working at a really cool streetwear brand called Fresh Jive. And the owner, his name was Rick Klotz, and he really did not give an F. Like, he was like one of those, like, he's called like the bad boy of streetwear. Like, he was like wild. And it was awesome because I was sitting there in the design room watching how he would think about things, and I was like, he would just pull out the craziest ideas and make them t-shirts, and people would buy them. And I remember like, okay, well, shoot, I got to come up with something even crazier then. Like, and so I decided to make a t-shirt again at 18 years old. Did not know about the law, did not know about copyright, did not know about any. I literally just started pirating programs, and I ended up making a graphic of Mickey Mouse with Minnie, and there was like some inappropriate gestures, I'll say it at that, happening on the t-shirt. And we started selling them, and we printed them at a local screen printing warehouse, and we started selling them and pushing it. And it was like kind of like a breakthrough hit, and literally like from going from nothing to something, that was like one of my first success stories in design. And I remember being like, oh shit, we made it. Like, this is awesome. And this one t-shirt design made like $40,000. And I thought I was like on top of the world, right? At 18. And then I got a cease and desist letter from Disney. And then we'll leave you there as the hook for the next episode. Let's go.
Coming episode 2 with Gian sometime in the
But just
future.
imagine cease and desist letter sent to your parents' house. Definitely a really good call for sure.
I love it. G, thank you so much for being my first podcast guest. It's an honor to have you here, and this was phenomenal.
Dude, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I love it. I'm excited for it. I think if we could help creative strategists like in their career paths, and then where they're coming from, people that want to become them, people that are them right now, and people that are looking to the future of it, like, that's what I'm here for.
Love it. Thank you so much. You're amazing.
Dude,
I love you.